Hello, one and all. Welcome to another episode of MMA Vision Analysis. This one, I'm here to talk about Manny Pacquiao's recent exhibition. The exhibition that people had varied views about. But before getting started, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and click that notification to get all of this that is new from this channel, your channel, the one and only MMA Vision Analysis. Manny Pacquiao made his boxing return in the form of an exhibition against a kickboxer. Anytime Manny Pacquiao's name get mentioned, I get super hyper. I turn into a kid, in all honesty, just because I grew up on the guy just kind of demolishing guys in higher weight classes, and he kept doing that for like 6 or 7 weight classes. If you're not familiar with Manny Pacquiao's style and the era that was the early 2000s, late 2000s, early 2010s, where Pacquiao was absolute prime, and you can even say mid 2000s as well at the lower weight classes. If you've never watched Antonio Margarito, Manny Pacquiao, you definitely missed out on one of the greatest fights that me personally I've ever seen. If you've never watched Manny Pacquiao, Miguel Cotto, then you truly missed out on one of the best combat sports fights that I've ever seen personally. I can at least speak for myself. If you've never seen Manny Pacquiao versus Ricky Hatton, even though that was a very short fight, then you truly missed out on a spectacular performance from a guy that evidently keeps giving. Now, he has made his boxing return in the form of an exhibition against a kickboxer, a guy that's much larger than him. It's clear at first sight. So there's a couple things that was working for the opposition of Manny Pacquiao the night of the exhibition. That's size and age, obviously. The guy had pretty good boxing technique, I cannot lie. He was pretty good with his hands, pretty nice with his hands. And also, obviously, something that I've mentioned 3 times at this point, the thing is that he was much bigger than Manny Pacquiao, pretty much towering over Manny Pacquiao. But that did not stop Manny Pacquiao from landing those exciting combinations. Every time Manny Pacquiao throws a flurry of punches from those strange angles, it's just, for me, it instantaneously turns me into a kid. I cannot help myself but to get super excited because you never know when the next punch is coming, and you never know which one will be the knockout punch. That's definitely the case even for a 46-year-old Manny Pacquiao. Now, some people have suggested and went as far as saying that Manny looked like a 100-year-old man. I would like to, like I said, for the most part, I like to think that I'm pretty reasonable in the way that I view things, break them down. Obviously, this case, we are talking about one of my favorite fighters of all time. Perhaps my favorite fighter of all time. I don't know, but there's definitely a handful of fighters that I can call one of my favorite fighters of all time. Manny Pacquiao is definitely top 3 for me. I'm just a huge fan. Like I said, if you're not familiar with Manny Pacquiao in his prime, then it's something that's very difficult to explain. It's inexplicable almost. Just the fact that the dude moved up 6 or 7 weight classes and dominated every single time. He did fall short. He has had devastating losses, obviously, but still does not stop Manny Pacquiao from being one of the greatest boxers of all time. And when I heard that the guy was making a return, I was like a kid in a candy store, even though it was only an exhibition. I believe that the thought behind the exhibition was that it was somewhat of a preparation, I would assume, for an actual comeback. I don't know how Manny Pacquiao's camp is going to view the return after the performance the night of the exhibition. Me personally, Like I said, I like to think that I have a very fair view on things, or at least I like to think so. So, like I said, some articles have suggested that Manny looked like a 100-year-old man in the exhibition. Statements sometimes are very easily made, and I think a lot of the times when we make statements, myself included, we don't truly think of what we're saying. We have to be very cautious of what we're saying, and a journalist is no saint. Obviously, they're going to want to capture headlines and capture attention, and you name it. Well, obviously, capturing the headlines by using Manny Pacquiao's name and suggesting that he looked like a 100-year-old man. I do understand that Manny Pacquiao is 46 or 47 years old. We have to break down the fight legitimately. We have to be professional when we're breaking down these kind of fights, okay? I do understand that in the beginning stages of the fight, Manny Pacquiao did look like he was a step behind, a full step behind. I'm going to go ahead and say that. I'm not going to say half a step behind. I will say a whole step behind. Beginning of stages of the fight, he was looking like he was a full step behind. Now, let me remind the journalist that suggested that Manny looked like a 100-year-old of something that's called ring rust. Okay? Ring rust could happen to a 20-something-year-old fighter. It could happen to a 30-something-year-old fighter. And it certainly could happen to a 40-something-year-old fighter. In terms of body composition, Manny did not look out of shape. As a matter of fact, he's actually lost some definition. He definitely looks lighter than some, because, look, early 2010s Manny was a guy that was a nightmare for whoever stood across him. If you guys are not familiar with Manny of that era, I highly suggest looking up Manny Pacquiao versus Antonio Margarito. It's going to be worth every second of your time. Matter of fact, it might make you fall in love with Manny Pacquiao if you're not familiar with his style and what Manny truly brings to the table. If you've never seen Miguel Cotto, Manny Pacquiao, I highly suggest you go and watch those two fights specifically. You're going to see a prime Manny Pacquiao, especially the Antonio Margarito fight. If you are looking for a fight where Manny Pacquiao expressed total dominance, and it's a fairly recent fight, at least if we were to take Manny Pacquiao's illustrious long career into consideration, that's a fairly recent fight. I believe the one against Antonio Margarito, I want to say it was like 2009-ish. 2009, 10, 11, somewhere around there. Now it makes no difference. Over 10 years ago. I do understand it's an old fight. The recording of it is, awesome quality. I highly suggest whoever haven't watched that fight, go and watch Antonio Margarito versus Manny Pacquiao. If you're not familiar with Manny Pacquiao, this is going to draw a perfect picture of who Manny Pacquiao truly is. I just wonder for Manny, what if this guy was a mixed martial artist? I do understand he wouldn't have been as good in boxing, obviously, because of his split time in terms of practice technique. But I just wonder if this guy can grapple and do jiu-jitsu and kick, has Muay Thai skills. That guy is, it's inexplicable for me. It's almost something that I cannot put into words what Manny Pacquiao was in the early 2010s, late 2000s. Just a different kind of fighter, a legendary fighter, and as John Anik likes to say, Manny Pacquiao of those times was definitely all of your favorite fighters' favorite fighter. That's a fact. Shout out John Anik. Now, that being said, there is something that's called ring rust. You could be in your 20s, 30s, or 40s. Obviously, you will experience ring rust. But as that fight graduated into its latter stages, we saw Pacquiao start to find his rhythm, speed, and he started landing some big shots. Whether it be uppercuts, over the hand, you name it. Manny Pacquiao was able to get the rhythm of the fight. I do understand that he's not in his 20s anymore. We are not looking at the late 2010s, early 2000s Manny Pacquiao, okay? That's not what I'm saying. As a matter of fact, in the beginning stages of the fight, it was almost as if Manny Pacquiao's thoughts were moving faster than his hands were. You can tell that he wants to do something, but his reaction time in terms of thought to action was very evident. It was very slow. Like I said, as the fight graduated, the dude did not look like a 46-year-old. And, the fight ultimately ended in a draw against a guy that's much younger than him. Who's fairly active, who's much bigger than him. So what do you expect of a 46-year-old Manny Pacquiao going against let's say, active fighter, much bigger fighter with good technique nonetheless, and, given into consideration that Manny is 46 years old, I believe that Manny looked, I don't want to say phenomenal, but it did not look bad. Did not look bad, especially in the latter stages of the fight. Ultimately, fight ended in a draw, but I think it's kind of borderline disrespectful to say that Manny looked like a 100-year-old. We've had guys capture titles in their late 40s. The likes of George Foreman, right? I did not live through that era, but it's a story that echoes till this day in the boxing world and just the combat sports world in general. If you're not familiar with George Foreman, then I question how familiar you are with boxing. George Foreman, Muhammad Ali, rope-a-dope. That's young George Foreman, and I believe it's a 45, 46-year-old George Foreman wins a heavyweight title. So there is nothing out of the realm of possibility. Obviously, Bernard Hopkins as well, a fighter. I believe Bernard Hopkins fought to his early 50s, and he was looking good. Like, he was looking good, keeping up with those guys. Now, this is not me trying to deny the effects of age. That's something that's undeniable. Age has its effect on every living creature. Time is forever moving. But there's one thing that we have to realize. Not all DNA ages the same, number one. Number two, how fighters take care of themselves after quote-unquote retirement matters so much. Some guys, they lose their shape within the first 6 months to a year. They become a complete different person. Manny Pacquiao did not look like a retired fighter to me, shape-wise at least. Like I said in the beginning, he did look slow. He looked like he was a step behind. Eventually, he caught up, and he was able to get a draw against the active, younger, bigger fighter. That's just a fact. Whether you like it or not, whoever wrote that article suggesting that Manny looked like a 100-year-old, yes, if you were to compare Manny Pacquiao to the Manny of the late 2010s, late 2000s, early 2000s, of course, that is not the same person. If you guys are familiar with soccer, there's a player named Lionel Messi. Leo Messi still plays. But Messi now and Messi 14 years ago, it's almost as if it's a complete different person. But the guy is still very effective nonetheless. Matter of fact, he just won World Cup for his national team, Argentina, almost 2 years ago. So age could be experience. I do understand that age has an effect, but there's a couple things we have to keep in mind. Every situation we have to analyze differently, and we have to be very specific with the way we analyze things, okay? We have to analyze each individual as an individual. You understand? And this is not me saying that, hey, I think Manny's ready to make a comeback. I think that would be a pretty bad idea, if I must be honest. What I'm trying to say here is that for a 46-year-old Manny Pacquiao that's been retired for 3, 4, 5 years, I don't know when the last time Manny Pacquiao was in the ring, he looked pretty darn good, especially in the latter stages of that fight. If you made it this far, truly appreciate you for sticking around. Please let me know what you think in the comments and subscribe for more.